reception is. Let's have a look.
Okay, got the record on, so I shall formally start proceedings. Okay, good evening everybody, and thank you for joining us on a Friday evening. I know people often have other stuff going on a Friday evening, so it's good that you could come along and be part of this. And tonight is our first guest session. Ian Solomon Kawall, aka KMT Freedom Teacher, and he's going to talk to us all about his fantastic project he's doing down in South London, Morden, Made Project Gardens. So I'll kind of hand over to you, Ian, if that's okay.
It's getting slicker and slicker each time, Graham.
I know.
How you doing? How's it going?
It's all good. It's all good.
Exactly. Oh, that's great. Yes. So I normally start with an introduction. So my introduction is a musical piece. This track is called No Meat, No Bones, No Blood. So no meat, no blood, no bones. No meat, no blood, no bones. No meat, no blood, no bones. Making my spirituality grow. Oh. No meat, no blood, no bones. No meat, no blood, no bones. No meat, no blood, no bones. Making my spirituality grow. As the world and shift, our minds expand. We become more in tune with the land. We eat not justified. A healthy diet of flesh, say they lied. Cruelty to animals, the scale surpass. They're from sad diet at an all-time high. Call out Kentucky and McMurder, the V way of life. Feed the world over. More ingrained, so let's not strain. Topsoil depletion is farming to blame. Rasta woman says you are what you eat, so put it into practice and eat more greens. I said, no meat, no blood, no bones. No meat, no blood, no bones. No meat, no blood, no bones. Making my spirituality grow. Yes, greetings. My name is Ian KMT, KMT the Freedom Teacher. I run a project in South London. Feel free to get interactive in the chat as we go along, because it makes it good for me to bounce off rather than it being like a lecture. It should be fully participatory and interactive as much as possible online. So yeah, in the background, we have my garden, which has been the project, my home, designed using permaculture principles and design for the last 15 years. And what's remarkable about that period of time is that for 9 of those years, it was completely self-funded. So I had no money. I'm just going to switch a camera view so you can get a few 360 as well. So let's see if we can switch it over. Let's have a look. Let's have a look. See if we can do that. Not switching it over, maybe because I'm already talking. So I'm just going to give you a little best as I can. So forgive the mess because we're having a bit of a break this year because as we know, gardening can be quite intensive, even if you're doing no dig. Still got compost system here, couple of beds, got perennials, we've got a pond, got a tree house, compost toilet, forest garden needs a bit of TLC at the moment. And this is our recent addition. This is a natural build. This is a straw bale build. Okay. So the whole purpose or the whole, I think what makes us unique as a project is the fact that basically it's a council house in South London, and it's basically really trying to make green spaces, permaculture, environmentally accessible to all. That's what really makes it unique with us. And how we do that in a variety of ways. We do it through workshops, open days where anybody can come. There's no charge. Anyone can come irrespective of their background, experience, etc. Anyone can come and they basically just come to the garden and they basically just learn about growing food, permaculture, having a safe space, having a safe space, networking, job advice, creche. You know, the garden is not just a garden in the sense of actually, you know, this is, I think, when you work in community settings, you know, having one linear definition of what the role of the garden does is similar to when Graham does that chart when you kind of like the outputs of the tree. Well, if you did the outputs of the garden, a community garden, they would be an incredible array as well. So that's very much what we do. More recently, I've kind of discovered that not just with May Project Garden, which is a community hub, but there's quite a few branches or threads that have come out of May Project Gardens as a community hub. And they are Hip Hop Garden, which is our youth program. So again, I gave you a little bit of rapping, I gave you a bit of MCing. If you look at the permaculture flower, you'll see that creativity is a massive part of that, the way we engage audiences. When you don't have a lot of money, you have to be creative and innovative in terms of how you get the community involved, and creativity is one of the ways we do that as well. So we have Hip Hop Garden, which is our youth program, probably the most transformative youth program. The reason why I say that is because we work with probably to consider to be the most challenging young people in and around London as well. An example of that more recently is that the youth club we worked in was shut for 18 months because there was a fatality there. There was a stabbing, and it recently opened up, and within 4 weeks it shut again because there were some more stabbings. So those are the kind of environments I work in particular, and I like those environments. I'm particularly keen on those environments because we use this principle of valuing the marginal and valuing the edges. And so when you apply this principle to people, the same applies. You know, we're not a fluffy, very, although we're very established, we're not a fluffy, you know, how would I say, we are the world kind of organization. We're very biodiverse, we're very inclusive, we're very open, but we are very prone to make mistakes. We have to make a lot of mistakes to learn. We have a lot of challenges. We're under-resourced, you name it. You know, we have to, it's a challenge, you know. So that's kind of that's Hip Hop Garden. Then we have an event called Can We Grow. You probably find that a lot of people who might be in permaculture, I think everyone on board has a certain amount of knowledge and interest already, but what about for those people that don't? So Can We Grow literally is like a natural environment in a club. So how does that translate? It translates, for example, we've had apple pressing on a dance floor, you know, while people are kind of dancing and raving, like we've had an apple pressing going on in the background as well. So that's our event, Can We Grow. There's myself as an artist, KMT, as I've performed as well. I've discovered more recently I'm dyslexic. So the reason why we haven't had no funding for 9 years was the fact that I was dyslexic. I only found out more recently. But in the process of me really kind of connecting with nature and understanding nature through permaculture, and really embodying that from a people care point of view. I think a lot of people go into permaculture, which is fine, and focus on earth care. But I truly believe, and actually statistics from the council and most statistics tell you this, or if you believe in statistics, another conversation, but they say 60% of change behavior, or people's behavior, comes from people themselves as well. So that's why we always focus on people. If we can't engage or be with people, we truly can't, we don't believe that the planet and the environment can be regenerated, it can't be saved, or it can't be enhanced, it can't be, you know, whatever it may be, but it's really the responsibility of people and their kind of impact on that as well. So that's kind of where we have that as well. And then because all my work tends to be in the community, all those strands, as I'm sure we know, especially more recently with the COVID and lockdown, how disproportionately certain groups are affected by those impacts. For example, I'm from a Black working class environment, so I'm more impacted by the economic situation of COVID. People that have disabilities, people that are from LGBTQ, in women as well, there's still a difference between the amount of money women get paid, unpaid labor for, like, you know, looking after children, etc. So these are basically all groups we engage with. but it doesn't really community work doesn't really pay. You know, it's not a high, you know, you don't get paid loads of money for it. So I set up a consultancy, and what I do, I use the same principles I've learned from the community and permaculture to consult companies as well. So yeah, I'm gonna go to the chat now to see if there's any questions. And if there's any questions, I'll respond to those. If Graham wants to kind of jump on board and facilitate a little bit, and I can continue a little bit more if people would like as well.
Okay, there's not many questions in the chat at the moment, but maybe people might want to throw some questions at you directly. So
Yeah,
open for questions. Everyone's quiet tonight.
Wow.
So, Ian, both Pete and I have got our hands up, but Graham's ignoring us, so that's okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. So I'd written in the chat box, so I'll tell you directly. So my initial part of the question was, Ian, what's your background? And then because you said a lot more, so I've qualified that and saying in terms of community gardening and community hubs, I'm really wondering within that question, because it's evident, where did you find your passion for what you do?
So my passion started from injustice. You know, so basically, I was a carer for my mum for probably about 20 years. It might be echo, sorry about that. Just doubled the screen just so I can basically transfer. Is that okay now? Has the echo gone?
That's good.
Sounds good here.
Okay, fantastic. So I was a carer for my mum who had mental illness, and she had quite severe mental illness to the point where actually she passed away as a consequences of the accumulation of her mental illness. And actually, me seeing that as a young person as a young child throughout my teenage life, it was very traumatic. So I've always been passionate about social change and helping people to some degree. My background was in music. I was involved as a promoter and an advocate and as a fan of music, but I was very interested in how music could be used for social change as opposed to just entertainment per se. So if you know, for example, probably the most recent artist you might have heard of is Akala. I don't know if you've heard of Akala. Okay, so Akala's probably like considered to be one of the kind of preeminent kind of hip hop artists in the UK. So I've worked with him. The biggest artist I've worked with is a guy called Nas, who used to work with Jay-Z. So that's kind of my background. But I didn't really feel, I don't know, I just didn't feel comfortable in those places. I think they were too hyper, too male aggressive. They were too, you know, sexism, you know, all the isms were very apparent in that environment. Yeah, Nas is the best. I definitely would agree. So I kind of didn't really feel, I didn't feel completely at home. And then also I was working in the community. I was working in the education sector, the third sector. But in a charitable sector, I was creating these amazing projects and engaging lots of young people in community, but I wasn't getting my pay rise. I wasn't getting my promotion within those organizations. This is one of the challenges we face as a Black-led organization. You know, the environmental sector is the least diverse sector in terms of the labor and workforce as well. So the work that I do is very unique. It's definitely changing now. I think it's becoming very topical with Black Lives Matter, but I've been doing this 15 years. And when I first started, there wasn't that kind of response. So that was kind of the background. But another person that came into my world is a guy called Randy Mayers, who was a permaculture Jedi. And I was, you know, basically it's my home, and he moved in a year after my mum passed away. And he just was like, can I get involved in a garden? And I was like, of course you can, like, go for it. It's just like, nothing's really happening. And then within a couple of months, I was just fascinated to see how he, not just what he was doing, but his being, like the pace that he moved, how connected he was with nature, how in tune with it, how he was just, and I was like, this is phenomenal. And I think that moment really kind of, those kind of key things really opened up, the combination of those kind of things opened up my passion for getting involved in permaculture. community hubs and community work.
Thank you, Ian. That was a phenomenal answer.
Thank you.
Peter, do you want to follow me?
Yeah, I'll follow on. Hi, Ian. Thanks for the time this evening. I mean, obviously, you know, you come across with the people care as being a very, very key component of your day-to-day permaculture. But I was kind of interested over the last 9 years or so, what's been, in your opinion, the greatest challenge that you've faced, and obviously problem to solution, how you've addressed that?
I mean, you know, funding is always going to be the biggest problem living in this society that we live in. I think what happened really, the reason why we're quite established as an organization is that we really focused on building relationships, using people care to build relationships with people. So, for example, most of the the straw bale is not a good example, actually. Most of the stuff that was volunteer led, like for example, if I take you inside, there's a lot of art inside the house, and most of the activities that were formed voluntary. They weren't paid activities. And what used to happen is that people used to come to the site and people be like, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that. And I'd be like, okay, let's go, let's try. So having a space to support people in their passions and almost following their dreams, or just even having a space where they could explore that, was the solution. You know, I think very often when we look at a lot of permaculture in not the UK but globally, it is still the kind of the space for people with wealth and resources and affluence, and actually that doesn't reflect the majority of the world. So it's really about, for me, what the alternative ways are if it's not just economic, and actually people as a resource is a solution.
Cool, thank you.
Pleasure. What do you do, Pete, Alan? What does everyone do? Where's their interest lie? Like, you know, what is it let me know a little bit more about yourselves. What are you into, Pete? What is it brings you here today?
Okay, throw it out to me. I'll take it first, then Alan. Yeah, I mean, I've been involved in mobile telecoms for donkey's years, but you know, in the sense of working to earn some money, but that was not what I was interested in. I've now come to a point in my life where I'm moving into what I do want to do, and that's permaculture, sustainability, and hopefully taking that forward to a place where I'm already working with a transition town to help do education in that arena to all age groups. I'm not specific to young or old. So that's where I come from.
Great. It's interesting. It's good. I know Sunny's got a question, and also Prue has as well. But it's really interesting that you mentioned telecoms, because actually BT, one of my consultancy offering was to BT. And actually I was thinking, why was BT contacting me? And what it was, because what they're seeing is that because of the amount of internet people are using, it's actually having quite a detrimental effect on their consumers or their customers, and they want to offset that. And I can't disclose, can't talk too much about what I suggested to them, because they might actually do it, and I've got an NDA, so I can't say too much. But I'll just say that to me, it was very obvious what the solutions were. Do you know what I mean? But obviously that kind of goes against maybe their business model as well, in terms of actually what they want to achieve. So yeah, I definitely think it's really important. I'm not trying to walk off into the hills like we are the world. Like, I think what we're really keen about doing is actually, how does this work in inner city environments? Because that's where the shift as a population, as a global population, is moving towards. You know, more people living in cities for the first time, or urban environments, than ever before. So that's kind of what I'm really interested in as well. So yeah. question from Sunny. Sevigen or Sevigen?
Thanks, Ian. And yeah, thanks for holding this session today. I just wondered if you could talk a bit more about your experience with volunteers and particularly how you accommodate kind of potentially very varied skill sets and different levels of skills. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a challenge. I'm sure Graham could testify to this, and anyone who actually works in a community setting. I just say that I really think the skill of holding space with volunteers is really undervalued. Really undervalued. I don't think people realize how skillful that is, because as you said, we've talked about the different ranges of people that you might encounter. Like, people come from all spectrums of society, including corporate, into my garden. The same reasons what Pete was saying about, wanting that transition from a more corporate environment to a more, sustainable, regenerative lifestyle. It's quite common that people come to the space. I've always been surprised by that, but it's actually becoming more common because people are starting to, okay, what do I really want to do? So the main thing for me is a permaculture principle: observe and interact. Like, use the principles in terms of engaging. And this was always really fascinating for me, because I think I did a lot of this stuff in my community settings already, but I didn't have a framework. And then when I started understanding the principles, I was like, I do this already. I just didn't have a name for it. So, for example, steady and slow solutions. When you have volunteers, like, we have this preoccupation with goal-centric. We've got to get someone here. We've got to get them here. We've got to get, just let them enjoy their space. Just let them do what they want to do. It's good to buddy people up. It's good to delegate, companion plant as well, get people with different skills to work together. It's good, again, with the permaculture biodiversity. Mix the volunteers up. Very often birds of a feather flock together. That's very common, it happens with all groups of people. So actually just, mix them up a little bit, but I think the most crucial thing is listening. I think when you start engaging with nature, people, we know this, but people don't really understand that nature is one of the best communicators in terms of expressing what it needs or what is happening. But we've just kind of lost that ability and skill. And actually, by connecting with nature, it's deepened my ability to listen to things in a new way, in a deep way, in a more kind of holistic way. So applying that to volunteers is very, very important. Sometimes I'll have a chat with a volunteer for half an hour, 40 minutes. And that's what I do. So those are kind of the little tips. If you want more, then I can give you some more, but I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, that's fabulous. Thank you. It's a lot to think about.
True.
Thank you, Ian. It all sounds really interesting what you've been doing, and I was wondering whether working, doing your project in London, where I would imagine a lot of the people you're working with feel very disconnected from nature when they first come to you, whether there is any particular element of your work that you notice most frequently engages people to feel connected with nature.
I think the safe space. Having a safe space. I feel like, if you look at, I think the challenge for more formal organizations, and actually a lot of them, why they've come into me for consultancy and asking these questions, is because actually they're more formalized. So actually people frequent them. For example, I'll give you an example of the National Trust. The National Trust is a statistic, and what they show is that most people go to National Trust sites when they have children, and then when the children have children. There's a massive gap in between, as well. So there's a whole group of audience that are not present and not attending to the spaces. So my thing is really about making it safe, making it accessible, making it inclusive. Those are the kind of things you always hear me rabbiting on passionately about. So people go, not this guy again, not this guy again, because it's that simple. Like, I can't really change the model. It's that. And if you look at nature again, if you look at my garden, there's such a range of different species, but they all coexist. So if they can coexist in a garden space, why aren't we as human beings possible to do that? We can do. You have to create the right environment. You know, you have to create the, you know, the fertile environment to ensure that happens.
Thank you. That's really helpful, and it makes sense what you're saying, that it's less about what the thing is and more about how you welcome people into it. So thank you.
And then also as well, we have to recognize our stuff. Like, we all have stuff as facilitators and hosts. Like, you know, one of the greatest things that's happened to me in this process, I've met people from all different backgrounds and spectrums, and they've come to me, and I, whether I like them or not, agree with them or that's irrelevant. I have to make them feel welcomed. And that's a really good challenge for myself. So the opposite side of that is that many people travel abroad to get enlightened or go out of their immediate, like, they move out of zone 1. So when you start doing the zone with Graham, you look at zones, and I call it zone 1. People like to go to zone 6 to get enlightenment. Do you know what I mean? And then they have to come back to zone 1. Start with zone 1. Like, look at yourself and your environment and what you can do there before reaching out. I think that's a really important part of this process as well. And then we've got Pete. Pete.
Yeah, I'm afraid I've got another question for you.
Oh.
To kind of build a little bit, and I'm glad you mentioned zone 6 there, because in your introductory song, and I, you know, if this is too personal, please don't answer it. I'm happy with that. But you mentioned spirituality. And I was wondering, I mean, for me, and this is a personal thing, because spirituality to me is a very personal thing, there's a close connection for me between permaculture, nature, and my interaction there. And I was just wondering how big a part that plays for you, because you kind of give me the impression that maybe there's, you know, it's not just for you, just the book version of permaculture, if I can put it that way.
No.
But there's more to it for you.
And I think the combination of being dyslexic and my personal trauma has made it really difficult to articulate that until more recently. I think I've got more clarity about what I've created. And I think historically, if you look at any, like the David Holmgrams, you know, etc., they always reference indigenous cultures as the basis for their understanding of permaculture. You know, I don't think that gets acknowledged enough within the permaculture movement. So when you understand that there wasn't this separation between us and nature, there wasn't this kind of thing, it was embedded in every aspect of their life. So for me, I don't know if you can see, there's a screen, I don't know if you can see there's a little green image, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a robin on the image. I don't know if, actually, no, you can't, I don't know if you can see it, but if you go to my website, you can see the logo, May Project Gardens. I'll put it in here as well. And what happened was, it's really interesting. The gentleman that, when my mum passed away, there was a whole, literally, I'll show you the back of here. So this fence, there was a whole, literally a group of robins that flew by a couple of days after she passed away. And I was like, wow, that's incredible. I've never, all my time in the garden, I've never ever seen that, a group of robins actually fly together in a group. They're very territorial. They're fierce little birds. they don't mess around. So I was like, that's really, really amazing. And I've always attributed that with my mum's spiritual animal. If you look historically, indigenous cultures, and not just indigenous cultures, all over the UK, you know, prior to this, you know, this capitalist society that we live in, there was always this druids, witches, pagans. There was always this connection to the land. There was always that kind of, you know, celebration, always that connection. So I was like, okay, that's really interesting. Like, I definitely, okay, that's me. I'm definitely confident that that's been my association. The designer didn't know this story. And basically you can see the little logo, the green symbol, all of these elements he took from my garden, like the leaves, the trees, there's my face on the top. And then he put the robin in the logo, and he didn't know the story. And so for me, that robin, like, I don't know if you can hear it now, but if you can hear the bird, that's a robin singing. Like, you know, the connection, when you start to understand, like, or not even understand, when you start to reconnect with nature, like, we're talking about communication, listening, they they talk to you, but we just forgot how to listen. You know, every animal, I've got a post on Facebook where I'm talking about, you know, I started striking up a relationship with the ducks in the park, and everyone's like, "Oh, you're a crazy guy. The ducks don't do it as usual." And then someone came and photographed the ducks, and literally they came out of the water, and they were like, literally, it was like a catwalk. They came out, they were like, you know, and everyone was like, she got the picture. I was like, see, I told you. So yeah, spirituality, and you know, it's holistic. I don't think when you talk about nature, you can't talk about spirituality. How you interpret that is a very unique thing. But I would say that with nature, spirituality is central to that connection with nature.
Yeah, I mean, I think a good example of that is Findhorn. I mean, and the way that they built up over the years. But it's interesting. The other thing, one just last comment. The robin is seen as a spiritual messenger from the universe.
Okay, there you go. And the thing is, every time someone gives me some new information about it, like, you know, so like even someone was telling me, like, you know, how fierce the robin is and how territorial, I was like, wow, it makes sense. This little bird, like, you know, is fierce. So what's really beautiful, like, you know, Graham's company is called Spiral Seed. It's this spiral, this kind of thing of knowledge that, you know, nature abhors straight lines. So every single person, as I mentioned before, just by speaking to you, I've learned something new. And this is about relationship. This is why people care is so important as a principle of how we want to create stuff. And also it takes a bit longer. Everyone's obsessed with this thing of just, let's do this in a year. You know, you're supposed to observe a site for a year before you even get started. So maybe we should also take that into consideration when we start working with people. Maybe it takes time for people to get to where they need to get to in order to basically be fully integrated in the work as well. I'm aware that Timmy and Joe and Julie and Barik, there's quite a few people that haven't said anything, and I'm very conscientious of again listening to the people that haven't spoken. So please feel free. If you don't want to talk, please put something in the chat. I think also, again, one of the things I've learned is to always find out who's not spoken, who's not, because sometimes there are places where you get some really amazing information from as well, or insights as well. So please feel free to, you know, chip in or chirp in. Yeah, we're good. Graham, over to you.
Ian, this is Alan.
Hi, Alan. How you doing? You good?
I'm okay. I'm more than okay. This is this is pretty awesome. Thank you. I'm just waiting for the time when, what did you call him? Mr. Burnett. That threw me. I'm thinking, who the heck's Mr. Burnett?
Sorry, I'm there. I just couldn't unmute for some reason. My button was stuck. But yeah, so yeah, who else has got their hand up? There's people who've got their hands. I can't see who's got their hands up at the moment. It's
Alan.
I know Alan.
Go for it, Alan.
No, what Ian, what Graham's trying to do is to support you, and I am as well. I don't want to ask you another question if there's clearly someone else who has a different question, because the diversity that we've got in this course, we already appreciate. Everyone's got something really interesting to offer. They just need people like me and Pete to shut up. Which is okay.
But again, that's part of this process. Again, we have to recognize, you know, our strengths and privileges as well. So as men, we tend to dominate spaces. And again, it's what I say about safe spaces. When you know that, then what are the ways that what you've clearly identified? It's a small thing, but I think sometimes the small things are really more important than the big gestures, because those things can be translated into the larger projects. And this is why I'm now in a situation where after 15 years, I can now consult with businesses, because it's this very much the small stuff, like what you've just talked about, you know, us stepping back, you know, and other groups stepping back as well when the time's right. It's not saying don't interact, like observe and interact. That's fine, and obtain a yield, like, you know, definitely. But there are times about integrate rather than segregate. You know, it's really important that we recognize that. So yeah, I mean, there's 3 other hands, so you can definitely go for it. The people that I've welcomed to speak have not contributed, which is totally fine. Everyone's allowed to do that as well. So yeah, please feel free to go again, Alan.
I think we've got Pro and then Sunny had their hands up. So, Pro next, I think.
Okay,
Thank you.
I'll come back to you, Alan.
That was so interesting. I nearly forgot my question. So trying to bring it back to my brain at the moment. You talked about having, I suppose, having patience and slowing down when you're working with community and with volunteers. And that's something I really struggle with. And I think I have worked in environments where there's a really high emphasis on, you know, effectiveness and productivity and those sorts of things. And I find it very hard to break out of that pattern. And I wondered whether you had any advice for just centering the process rather than trying to get to the finish line all the time, because that is something I struggle with.
I think the activity, focus on the activity. So for example, one of the first thing we do, and people hate it, they hate me for this. When they come to the site, I'm like, walk around for half an hour, 15 minutes, half an hour in silence, just on the site. They hate me for it. Like, especially young people that are just like, they just get the mobile phone. I'm like, stop doing it. But the reason why I do that is to create this level of equality, if that makes sense, and to make them kind of actually tune into the environment of nature. And it's one of the things, again, observe and interact. How many times do we actually stop and be still and actually just observe the beauty, the wonder, the magnificence of nature, like the incredible stuff? Very few people do. So that's one of the things I do. I think having activities that are fun and engaging takes away that pressure, you know. So that's why growing is so magical, you know, as a tool of social community. That's why everyone's jumping on it now, because basically it's cheap as chips. Anyone can do it, really. You know, like anyone can grow stuff, really. Like, I'm not precious about, you know, like people making mistakes or getting seeds wrong or planting. I'm not into none of that. I'm like, just get your hands into the compost, get your hands into the soil. Let's just get into it. And then if people come back, people speak with their feet. If they come back, then bit more knowledge, come back, bit more the spiral thing again as well. They kind of really indicate. Another thing you can also do is give people pathways. It's very counterintuitive as a model to do that. But I go to people, okay, have you been to this space? Have you tried out this space? Have you worked with this person? That's how me and Graham work. We very much like, oh, by the way, do you know about Graham Burnett, who's based in Southend, completely other side of London, slightly further out, and I'm slightly further out. But we always go to, because what we do, we have this same passion for making permaculture accessible. So I think those 2 little things, or 3 things, making the space, making sure that the space is safe by actually introducing just time to be in silence. So it's not a verbal communication. That's the first thing. Do that exercise. I think it's a really good exercise. 2, what was the second one? I lost my train of thought. Second one was, help me out. Someone help me out. What was the second one I said? I've forgotten it. That's the dyslexia kicking in. And the second one I think was
opportunity to pause and reflect.
Yeah, so that was the first one. The exercises. The second one was the exercises. Actually doing activities where they're really fun. They're really, really fun. They're really engaging as well. And I can't remember the third one. Someone will pick it up at some point. So then we've got a question in the chat, and I'm going to go to this one because Julie hasn't responded yet. So thank you for that, for being, again, also acknowledge bravery. Not everyone is brave, you know, not everyone feels confidence. I don't, you know, acknowledge that, like for people that kind of maybe not spoken before, like it's a really good thing to do, to kind of just, okay, thank you for contributing, and acknowledge that, not in a condescending way, but just acknowledge that, you know, everyone brings something to the space. So she's very interested in, she, they, yes. Relief. I'm always very interested in specific practices around community building. Are there practices related to conflict resolution, reconciliation you can share from experience? Whew. Wow. Conflict resolution. So I really believe that the problem is the solution. Any problem that comes your way, there is a solution. And I can't stress that enough. So there are so many people that have come to the space and I've had conflict within my own space. Like, it's just part and parcel of the work. And I suppose the first thing is, again, is listening, really. Like, there was something, someone I work with as conflict manager, and I think she said, not being listened to is the cause of all problems, or something along those lines. I'm not paraphrasing it exactly. I think she did it much better than me. But what she said, or not being listened or not being heard, is a cause of all conflict. So I really feel like listening, taking a step back, is the most important thing to do in conflict, reconciliation. And also sometimes saying, I got it wrong. Like, even when you write, like, it's not about right or wrong. It's about, what do you want to achieve in a community setting? Do you want harmony? Do you want peace? So, for example, there is that, but also there is also boundaries that you have to put in place as well in community settings as well. And it's something that I've experienced more. So, for example, as well as making sure that people are listened to, they're fully engaged and they're supported and they're listened to, more recently I've had to put a lot more boundaries because it's my home and my space. So more recently now I've had to actually move, or actually have less activities in my home and on site. And actually we have another site which is like 10-15 minutes from here. So I don't know whether I'll answer your question, Julie, forgive me. I think I've gone on a bit of a spiral, as opposed to being much more kind of direct, because it's quite a lot of, I suppose it's just part and parcel of the work, if that makes sense. But I think listening, if you can get someone who's really good at conflict resolution, learn that skill just to be like, I'm not going to say anything, I'm just going to listen to what that person's got to say. And also what's interesting is that I call my composting, when people come to the space, a process of composting. People come and bring their waste material, which is like, your greens, before you put your compost, you put your greens in. They bring their trauma, they bring their anxiety, they bring their fear, they bring all that stuff into the space before we can compost them. That's part of knowing that. And I suppose the final thing would be to say is that you can't have, and I'll use metaphors, forgive me if they don't make sense or they're abstract, but you can't have sunshine without rain. So if you really want to have relationships, you've got to have a bit of conflict. You've got to have a bit of edge. You've got to have a bit of edge. That's part and part of this work. The more edge you have, the more solutions you come up with, the more innovation. And that's very much what makes us such a unique project, because we're very edgy in terms of how we work. We are beneficiaries in the way we work as well.
We got Timmy has got a hand up, and then I think Sonny was next after Timmy.
Hi, Timmy.
Hi, Ian. Thank you very much for this evening. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay.
I can. Loud and clear.
So I would be interested to hear about your wider community, as your neighborhoods. What did they say anything? Did they embrace your garden project, or did you have lots of conflicts coming from neighbors? Or
Yeah, I'm going to speak quietly because my neighbor's a mature woman, and she's quite elderly, and she's very, very miserable. So this is what I'm saying about boundaries. Like, sometimes this is what I'm saying, you can't resolve certain conflicts, so that situation with my neighbor, she's just a very old woman, elderly, unhappy, and there's nothing I can do. There's nothing, you know, I've bought a rosemary, she's picked gooseberries in my garden, you know, I've tried all the tactics under the sun in terms of conflict resolution, but there comes a point where, especially when you work in communities, there's just some people and some individuals that you cannot engage with, and that's the reality as well. Generally speaking, we tend to have more of a reach outside of zone 1. I think because of the fact that it's my home and a project, I feel like most of the neighbors, yeah, exactly. Most of the neighbors don't really engage, but more recently, the ones who have children are the ones that engage more. And also, it's not just about the grow-ins. For example, one of the things that I do is like I'm a creche. Like a mum will go, oh, can you look after my child for like half an hour? Or can you just, you know, can you go and support them in their school activities? Can you do this? So it's very much, there's a multitude of roles that I play for the community in doing this work as well. So it's a real slow burn. I think the flip side, if we were kind of a much more kind of formalized organization, we would have probably got more engagement. But I think something about stepping into someone's home on a project is a bit, maybe for some people, it's really comforting because it's a safer space. For others, it may be the opposite. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks. I hope you don't mind me asking a second question. I was really interested to hear that you've worked with some corporate clients, and I wondered if you had any tips of how you kind of change your message around the importance of considering the environment and people care and diversity, inclusivity. No change at all.
Yeah, like literally, I've been drilling this thing into corporates, even to the point where we have meetings and we try to get them to have meetings in the garden. You know, the reason why we do that is because it changes the power game. We talked about power earlier, and who's has power and who tends to be more dominant, whether that's conscious or not, it exists. So just by getting them to come to the garden, their whole dynamic changes, because they're not in the office. Actually, they've come out of the office. They're in you know, almost in, we're playing away. We're playing away from home. So I think that's really important. And then also, I really underpin the tour of the garden to inform how I work with corporate. So one of the crucial things that everyone's talking about is diversity at the moment. That's the big thing everyone's on, you know, diversity of BME, diversity of LGBT, you know, a thing. And I'm like, well, the simple thing is that if your company or organization is more diverse, it's more resilient. So I think it's really just kind of really reinforcing these principles and ethics within the corporate world, as opposed to trying to cater for the message. Now, the flip side of that is that you may not get that corporate money. But the thing with us is that the corporates that we work with are great. We have a great relationship with them. I won't say too much, but we're hoping to deepen our funding relationship with one of our corporate clients as well, which will be a massive achievement. The flip side of that is that, you know, because we are grassroots organizations and because we are more bold and we are more alternative and all that stuff, we are still perceived as unsafe in some respects. That's just a reality. So one of our corporate, one of our partners took 8 years to form, you know. The Permaculture Association took 4 years to form. We just got a partnership with Permaculture Association, Graham, after how many years? After 15 years we've been in existence, it took us 4 years to form this, make this partnership official. So, you know, if we're talking about nature, it's not a man-made time. It's you know, someone said to me something about an idea may take a lifetime to blossom. So, you know, with corporates, it can be very challenging, but I wouldn't deviate from the core values of what your organization is. And if it's to do with nature, stick to those principles, stick to those values. Thomas.
Hi, Ian. Thanks so much for your time and for speaking to us. I've been listening with great interest. I just wanted to ask, in all you've said, I don't think you've told us yet, what in your work have you been most proud of? What impact have you seen that gives you the most personal pride? And maybe related or maybe not. I'd also like to know, I've forgotten the second part of my question. What was it? I'll tell you what, answer my first bit and I'll come back.
No problem at all. That's my dyslexia perfection. That's me. Like, I've got this great idea. Oops, what is it? So I can relate. So I think is really my proudest thing is actually feeling like I belong, like I have a home, I'm understood with in nature. Does that make sense? Like I felt like for ages, I was too sensitive, I was too alternative, I'm too black, I'm too working class. All these labels, I'm like, yo. But then when I started to really connect with nature, I was like, nature is so diverse and so intricate and so complex. I was like, that's us. But we haven't, we try to take shortcuts in terms of how we understand each other and human beings. And nature doesn't do that. So for me, my proudest achievement is actually really being able to reconnect with nature, to have a better understanding of self. That's my proudest moment.
Thanks. My second bit, which might be the same, it might not, is oh god, it's gone again. No, what is this?
Someone's laughing at you. Someone's putting you under pressure.
You've alluded to some of the issues you faced and some of the problems you've come across. Yeah. When you look to the future, what gives you the most hope going forward?
The fact that, you know, we've done this without no money for 9 years and it's worked. So I'm just like, we just replicate this, like, and we don't replicate this in a very so what we're doing now is that we're working with different sites across the UK and further afield that want to replicate these elements. So what I've done now, because I've got this kind of suite of different branches or activities, this ecosystem, someone might say, okay, we want to celebrate the community. Okay, that's Come We Grow. For example, there's a massive issue with litter. That's me as an artist. I've got a song called Litter, literally Litter. You go to my website, you can see that, and that's a beautiful participatory, you know, social message, which is fun, engaging, but drives, you know, really drives the message home. And even when we did that, the guy was like, when the commission to do it, was like, did you plan this date? It was beautiful. So there's that. So I really just feel like having these different branches, replicating them and getting people to support them rather than recreate new stuff. I think we have this tendency for people and also organizations and individuals to see something and go, okay, let's recreate this. Actually, just partner with us. Like, that's what me and Graham do. We always bounce back off each other. Okay, you want a permaculture teacher? Here's Graham, does these courses, Graham's like, okay, if you want to know about, and that's kind of what we do. We recognize the biodiversity, where our strengths lie. And I think that's a really important part of actually just growing as an organization, actually recognizing that you can't do it all and celebrating difference and biodiversity. Yeah. Nice t-shirt. And then back to Alan. I think might be the final one. Is that okay, Graham?
Yeah, I'm conscious because when we spoke before, you said you had to be away kind of quite promptly. So yeah, we'll have to be a bit.
So, but it's been a really good. Thank you for all the questions. It's been really. We started off really like slow, but I think there's been some really great questions. So maybe. So yeah, there's one.
I had to pop off and change my t-shirt while you were talking. So, yeah, there you go.
This is the bird we were talking about. So Graham's t-shirt, you can see the bird. You can hear it chirp in the background. So that's a constant. Yeah. So
sorry. One last question from Alan.
It's a very quick question directly to Ian. So I've started to write in the chat box, but I realize it's quicker to actually answer the question if Graham will let me. So there's an organization which is a link between, which Pete referred to, the Transition Network, which Rob Hopkins is kind of reimagining stuff, and the Permaculture Association. They've created something called Control Shift. And I just wondered, are you okay about me speaking to my colleagues in that network about getting in touch with you? Because they're really interested in this whole idea of scaling out and up really excellent urban ideas into communities that would thrive with this message. And you're a practical example. So are you okay with that?
100%. That's the greatest thing. Again, after this, you know, one of the greatest things people can do is take some action. Like exactly what Alan was saying. It doesn't have to be. It could be financial, could be sharing, could be whatever it can be. But that's a really important part of this process, supporting each other as well. So after you have a talk, don't feel like that's the end of the talk. Actually, you know, actually use some of this. Obtain a yield. You know, actually go and use some of this stuff, and actually support us, because you know this work is very challenging. But I would not change a thing. As I said before, like, you know, the highs and the lows are just part of that really amazing process of actually doing this work as well. So yeah, thank you all for your time. Sorry, Tim, I didn't get to answer your question. I got it.
Thank you for your time, Ian. And I know you've got to be you've got another commitment elsewhere. So I know it's great you managed to fit us in. So yeah, thanks as ever. Really inspired by what you're doing. I'm really looking forward to actually
see you in the flesh.
Your place again. Yeah, rather than doing this online. Bloody hell! Yeah, it's been so long. Okay.
Take care, man. Thank you so much,
Thank
everyone.
you. See you all soon. Take care.
Right,
have a good
Bye-bye.
evening. Take care.
Love it. Look after, bro. Look after. If I can get out of this place.